Okay, how's everybody doing today? Great. I want to welcome you all to our fourth and final business model competition workshop. Those of you here and then also those of you joining us internationally. The focus of today is on creating a submission and submitting to the business model competition. So the agenda, we're going to start out just going over the calendar. Then we're going to talk about the structure of the International Business Model Competition. We're going to go over how to create a submission and what that submission should have within it. And then we're going to also talk about some do's and don'ts, which come from our founder of the competition, Dr. Nathan Furr. So to begin with, submissions for the International Business Model Competition are already open. They opened January 1st. The submission deadline for the International Business Model Competition is March 31st. And the semifinalists will be announced April 15th, with the finals being May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And for those of you here locally, you'll be hearing more about the local competition at the end of the presentation. So I want to go over, first of all, the competition structure and how you get into the International Business Model Competition. So first of all, your first choice is to win a qualifier. So there are qualifiers all around the United States and the world. For instance, there's one here at Brigham Young University. And if you win your qualifier, then you get an automatic bid into the International Business Model Competition semifinals. So on our website, for instance, at businessmodelcompetition.com, we have a number of qualifiers all throughout the world. If you are near one of those qualifiers or associated with one of those qualifiers and you win that, you automatically get into the International Business Model Competition. So that's the first way that you can get into the semifinals. The second way is to submit to the IBMC preliminary round. So if you don't win a qualifier, you can still submit to the International Business Model Competition through our website, which I'm going to talk about later. And then if you are not affiliated with a qualifier, maybe you're from a country that doesn't have a qualifier nearby, or you're from a state in the United States that doesn't have a qualifier, you can also submit. And so there are two ways, again, to get into the International Business Model final or semifinals, either through the at-large submission, which again I'll talk about a little later, how to do that, and then also, or you can win an IBMC qualifier. So reiterating, even if you're in a qualifier, for instance, those of you here at BYU, and you don't win, you can still submit to the International Business Model Competition through our website. So then we're now going to talk about how to create a submission. We're actually going to go to our website, businessmodelcompetition.com. So Kurt is helping me out with that. So first of all, you need to create your submission. And I'll talk about later what the submission should entail. But to create the submission, you need to screenshot a PowerPoint presentation with you narrating. So we have two examples of programs. Oh, sorry, scroll back up. Two examples of programs that you can use. The first, which is a free software option, is Screencast-O-Matic. It's not as flashy, but it gets the job done. And that one uploads automatically to YouTube. The other one we have available, or you could find another one if you wanted to, is Camtasia. Now that one's more professional. It's also a costly option, but they have a free trial that you can use. The advantage to using the Screencast-O-Matic is that it automatically uploads to YouTube. And in order to submit to the International Business Model Competition, you have to submit a YouTube video. And in regards to that YouTube video, when you create it, it needs to be either public, or if you don't want it to be public, you have to have it as unlisted. You cannot have it as private. If you submit a private video, we won't be able to see it, we won't be able to judge it, and you're out of luck, and sorry. So either public or unlisted. That's something very important to write down. And then on our website, if you scroll down a little bit, we have a couple of submissions, examples from last year's International Business Model Competition. And all 3 of these not only made it into the semifinals, but 2 of them actually placed in the final round. So these are good examples. One thing you'll note, though, is that these are over 8 minutes. And this year, the video must be up to 8 minutes. Now, we don't want you to just throw in filler or, just a bunch of stuff to try to get up to the 8 minutes if you're not going to fill it naturally. So if your video is only 5 minutes, that's fine. Don't feel obligated to get to 8 minutes. 8 minutes is just the maximum that we'll allow. And then I'm going to show you the application itself. So if you have your video, you're ready to go. If you go over to Compete and then under Apply, we have the submission form. So a couple of the things you need your team name, school affiliation, if you're using a Technium technology, and then the certification and agreement form. Can you scroll up, Kurt? Just a little bit more. So under how to apply, again, create an 8-minute video presentation using one of those software options that we have on our website. Upload your video to YouTube, make sure that it's either public or unlisted, and then you have to fill out and sign the certifications and agreement page, which is in the rules packet, which is also on our website. And that's where this comes in. You'll upload that document, you having signed it. So those are the basics of submitting your video. Now we're going to talk about, if you can go back to the presentation. So now we're going to talk about the video components. So what you need in your actual video. So you're creating your video. And then we're going to go back to our website. And then, scroll down a little bit more. So on our website, on that same page, so the page that I was referring to is under Compete, Submission, like how to create a submission. That's the tab. The format. So you want to start out with a title slide, and then you want to have assumption slides. So you're going in depth about the assumptions that you're making in your model. You'll talk about your action slides, like how you tested your hypothesis, the evidence that you gathered. You'll talk about your pivoting, like how you pivoted, if you pivoted, and what you did in that sense. And then you'll talk about your solutions, your strategy. You want to scroll down a little bit? And then in the end, you'll talk about the lessons that you've learned, the failures that you had, and then how you learned from those failures. And then finally, you should have an appendix at the very end. And just as it says, only when they need to support the body of the model. So don't throw in a ton of Excel graphs and spreadsheets of just random information. Only stuff that is going to be giving context and really answer questions the judges might have that you weren't able to do just in the course of your slides. So that's kind of the flow of your video and how it should be. And again, if you want some examples, we have some examples on the website. And then can you go back? Finally, I'm going to talk about the judges' do's and don'ts. So these are things as you're creating your submission, as you're creating your video, things that you should do and things that you should not do. These come straight from Dr. Furr. I'm going to start with the don'ts. So first of all, do not tell us that you pivoted, but not talk about why you pivoted. So don't just say, I have this product. We thought that our customers were these people, but then we decided to switch to a different customer segment, and not explain why you pivoted. Always explain why you are pivoting. Also, don't pivot for the sake of pivoting. Now, what exactly does that mean? That means you're just deciding to pivot, or you start to validate something, you have an assumption, you start to validate it, and the first bad piece of news or piece of bad news, you just decide, oh, I have to pivot. And so you just start pivoting over and over. I mean, sometimes you got to stick with your assumptions for a little while before you decide it's time to pivot. Don't just be pivoting all over the place. And then at the same time, sometimes you'll run into a situation where the idea you have it needs to die and you need to go to something else. And so just pivoting around the same idea that's not working is not a good thing to do either. Also, Another thing you don't want to do at the first of the presentation is talk for a long time about your team. You should just introduce, I'm the speaker, this is maybe the other person with me who's going to be talking, and then go into your presentation. Don't spend a lot of time saying, this is our background, this is who we are, I come from a family of 5, whatever. Don't talk about that. And then finally, sell us on your product with evidence. Make sure you have your evidence listed in your presentation. So how many people did you talk to? How many interviews did you conduct? You need to make sure you show your evidence. If you're just going in and saying, this is my assumption, and moving on without proving why this assumption is valid, it's not going to hold up. So then these are the things you do need to do. Yes? Sorry. Yeah, sell us on your product with, that's a don't. I apologize for that. Don't sell us on your product without evidence. Okay. So the do's, tell us the whole journey. So the business model competition is about telling us the story behind your model. So how did you reach your business model in the end? Tell us the journey. It should be a narrative. So you're going to talk about, your failures, false leads, where you messed up, where you had a course correction. It should be a narrative, not just like, these were all the good things that we did. You need to have the stuff, your mistakes and all of that, the whole entire story in your presentation. And then also, I kind of mentioned this before, tell us all of your evidence. How many people did you talk to? What did they say? Give us quotes. I mean, quotes are great things to have in your presentation. And then finally, tell us right away what problem you are solving. So this kind of goes in with what I said before, don't talk about your team for a long time. When you start your presentation, go right into the problem. What's your problem? What are you trying to solve? And jump right into your presentation. So finally, I just want to mention that the judging criteria is also on the website. And this should be bolded. It is subject to change. So a couple of things in summary. As you're creating your presentation, make sure that you follow those do's and don'ts. Make sure that you follow the video format that we have listed on our website. And it's also very important that as you're creating your submission, look to the judging criteria as kind of like a key that you should be using. Make sure that you are answering all of these questions. You'll notice these are questions. Did the team use the business model canvas or similar tool to identify and track assumptions? So obviously, in your presentation, you should have the business model canvas highlighted. And did the team clearly state their assumptions and hypotheses? Make sure that as you're creating your presentation, you're going through and making sure it answers every single one of these questions. Now, that's about all that I have for you, and we're pretty much done. So I want to thank you for coming out here, and thank you those who have joined us internationally, and hopefully we'll see you in the finals.